And to be honest with you, when they first walked in the room and said, Mr. Merle, we're about to send out a team to go and harvest your organ, I was somewhat taken back by that.
Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification to become part of the Transplant Helper community.
Hey, Transplant community, my name is Jim Merle, and I just want to welcome you back here on the program today. Today, we're going to be discussing three terms that are oftentimes very much associated with transplant, particularly right around the few hours surrounding the actual transplant itself. Now, each of these are terms that definitely apply themselves to the situation, but oftentimes, I have to admit, at least a couple of these are misunderstood, misapplied, and therefore sometimes can be even considered offensive to people. So with that being said, let me point out, yes, I'm wearing my glasses today. I don't typically do that. I don't generally wear my glasses on camera, but hey, I was having one of those days. I just kind of felt like I might actually want to see something. So I went ahead and put them on. In addition to that, you might be able to tell right here, I've actually shaven in the last day or two. A few of you were commenting that I was growing a beard a few weeks ago. I kind of sort of was. My kids, my wife are all cheering me on, but others were not, especially myself. And so I decided to go ahead and shave off that and ditch it. It was itchy and scratchy. I didn't like it. And then, I finally got a haircut down to where I kind of like to be. My hair is usually much shorter than most people would like, but when it gets to be about an inch long, I can't stand it. So we're back down around our maybe 3/8 of an inch max length, and that's pretty comfortable for me. This is what I call my winter haircut. It is a little bit longer than my summer haircut, but anyway, I'm comfortable with that. But that's not what you're here to do. You're not here to talk about me. You're here to talk about these three terms. And the very first term you might hear associated with your transplant is the term procurement. Now, if you're not exactly familiar with what that is, basically the word procurement means to go out, to get, to retrieve, to receive, okay? And oftentimes you'll hear that term associated directly with your transplant because they may talk about an organ procurement team that's going to go out and get your great gift of life. Now, in my case, for example, my gift of life came from Oklahoma, so it was about a 5-hour flight, I think, something like that, out there on a private jet from a hospital to go and procure that organ, okay? And oftentimes this is the most proper term that could be used for going out and getting an organ or whatever, because it's generally the one that's going to be used by your transplant center, the hospitals, and everybody associated with it. As a matter of fact, your OPO, which stands for Organ Procurement Organization, UNOS is just one of them. Most likely you've got a state-bound organization that does the same. Those are the people that are out set, and it is their job to try to search all over the map, all over the country, and try to find you an organ that best matches you. So the word procurement, although it's not a word we use every day, it's definitely one that applies in this situation. Now, the second term that is oftentimes used, and more times than not, this is the term that's mostly used by patients, maybe not your team specifically, but it is a very simple term. It is the word retrieval, okay? And it applies itself exactly the same way. To retrieve an organ, it's just what it sounds like. It's to go, to get, to bring back, to receive, to retrieve, and therefore it is most often used by us as transplant patients. Now, this is kind of a softer term. This obviously is a term that, doesn't seem harsh at all, doesn't seem offensive. I wouldn't assume to anybody. It's just a matter of doing what's got to be done. It's a matter of going and getting the organ, bringing it back so that you and I or whoever's involved can have the gift of life. And oftentimes the word retrieval is the one that is put in place of procurement. Say your medical doctor is more of a personal type person, he or she may come in and they may say, we're going to retrieve the organ. They may not use the word procurement, although in the background and on all the paperwork, the word procurement is probably being used. And then the third of these terms is the one that probably could be the most controversial, and it's really what we want to talk about more today. It is the word harvesting. Okay. Now, oftentimes I see in Facebook groups, social media groups, I've even heard this discussion in a waiting room outside of a doctor's office get kind of heated. When you talk about going and harvesting an organ, sometimes people will kind of get their feathers ruffled up over this because they say, well, that term is, it's just too blunt, too bold, too offensive. It's not personal enough, and it's just not a good term to use. And on one stand, I would probably agree with that. The word harvest probably is not the most appropriate word to use. Say, for example, if you had contact with your donor family in some way, like I do, I'm not going to call my donor's mother up and say Happy Harvest Day. That's just totally not the way to approach anything. Okay, so from that perspective, totally wrong, I would agree. And many times people will argue that the word harvest should be completely replaced across the board, whether it's in our side of the relationship or the medical side of things by the doctors and all, that they shouldn't use the word procurement. Neither should they use the word harvest. They should use the one in the middle there, the word retrieval, to really kind of soften things up, to make things a little bit easier to digest for all parties. Well, that is true with the exception of I want to present you, not an argument, I wouldn't say, but I want to present you a thought process, a way of thinking about the word harvest or harvesting, even when it applies to an organ, that reminds us of a better day, okay? Now, if you'll back up in your minds, for example, especially, maybe some of you will think about your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, whoever, people from generations gone by, when they use the word harvest, in pretty much any context, particularly in the physical context of things, they would have talked about harvesting vegetables, harvesting fruit. As a matter of fact, when I was a kid, they called the fall season the harvest season, for example. Oftentimes we call our fall festivals at school harvest festivals. You see, the word harvest is all about gathering, gaining, bringing back the fruits, the vegetables, the things that we need to keep on going, to extend our lives, to make our lives better. And the time of harvest in that context was a time of celebration. It was a time of gladness. It was a time of jubilance, when people really got excited because this was the time of year when the whole next year or even maybe years could be gathered from the fields and it could be celebrated and people could really be replenished and refreshed. Well, when you think about it in that way, and even when you take the word harvest and pull it out of that physical fruit-bearing context, put it over in the side of transplant, maybe we could think about it more like that. Because I'll be honest with you, this is a term that is often used, not every time, but oftentimes it is used behind those doors concerning our organs that we receive. Sometimes doctors talk about going out, and they did it for me. Now, that my time was 6.5 years ago, but I can remember the doctors coming in and saying, look, we've sent out a procurement team to, quote, harvest the heart, okay? And I thought about it from the brighter side. I thought about it from that jubilant side, okay? So I'm not saying that anyone's right or wrong here. If you prefer the term procurement, more power to you. You probably talk more like a doctor than I do. If you prefer the term retrieval, totally fine. I understand that. That is a softer term. It is a good term. But in my mind, and this is my personal opinion, and you can comment yours below, in my mind, the term harvest is a wonderful term. You may not choose to use it, but to me, if you think about it in light of the way I just drew the picture here, that's what transplant is. It's about getting a new chance, going and getting and receiving a harvest, a new chance at life, a new opportunity. It is a time, yes, of sadness for the families, okay, no doubt about it. It is a time of depressed state for those families. It is a time of pain, but for us on the receiving end, even though we do experience some of those emotions, for us it is a time of greatness. It is a time of excitement and joy, and it's just a time of greatness, of good things. It's a time of harvest. Okay, now again, I'm not arguing this one way or another. I happen to think the word harvest is okay in that context, but I'd love to hear from you below. What terms have you heard in the past? And there could be others. I just narrowed it down to the main three. What terms have you heard of discussed in the past concerning going and retrieving or getting or bringing back an organ to save a life? Because at the end of this is a gift, okay? This is a wonderful, wonderful gift, a great opportunity we've been given at life, a blessing we've been given at life, and I hope that we can, in some senses, celebrate it, no matter how we like to refer to it. So anyway, comment below. Tell me what you used to hear, what you're usually hearing. Tell me what you think about each of these three terms. I have no problem with that. Be kind, be nice. But, what do you think about these terms, this procurement, retrieval, or harvest? What's your opinion? That's all I want to know. Thank you so much for joining me today. And as always, until next time, stay stronger, friends.